Dead by Daylight's HUD is a problem. So many people involved in the community express their opinion on how DBD just isn't scary anymore. They blame this either on killer designs or skins. While I do believe that most horror limitations on current cosmetics have mostly been lessened, I think the reason this game doesn't immerse you like it used to and scare you is due to the HUD. When the game first started out, Behavior was still figuring things out, but over time they got a gist of how they wanted their game to feel, and so they improved on that. This is the HUD that DBD had for most of its lifespan, and it was simple, but that worked in its favor. It kept the focus in the whole screen just above the top perk icons. Everything was not so detailed, but that it kept it from being overly distracting. This was a great HUD, but it could have been improved on. They decided to update everything in the February mid-chapter 18.5 or 0.50 update. This new HUD was very different from the old HUD. Character portraits now had the survivors' real faces on them. Everything was so spaced out. This HUD was pretty much hated from the beginning. Players hated having to look or gossip. Every single corner of the screen, rightfully so. But not everything was bad in the HUD. In concept. With everything being so spaced out, there's little clumping clutter on the screen, leaving more screen real estate. This kept the focus in the middle of the screen without being too distracting, but is still more distracting than before. With the survivor portraits now being incredibly detailed, they always kept your eyes focused mostly on them, and then just taking a quick glance. After a short while, and a lot of negative feedback, Behavior decided to change the HUD again to be more suitable for gameplay. This is the HUD we know today. Yes, it's very easy to read from a gameplay standpoint, but it's visually terrible. Everything is unsymmetrical and cluttered. Nothing is paced out in a visually pleasing way. The focus was shrunk and is kept kinda on a diagonal line. The survivor portraits are still so distracting, and now even more with the new Survivor Activity HUD update. I'm gonna say this again, this is the best HUD from a gameplay standpoint. Being able to see clearly what survivors who and what they're doing is very useful. But it takes away from the immersion and just constantly reminds the player that they are just playing a video game. With the old HUD, we went from simple, small, visually pleasing icons that kept the focus neatly in the screen that increased immersion and made itself not too distracting to a HUD that is very bad from a gameplay standpoint, but kept around the same ideals as previous. To now a HUD that is very good for gameplay, but sucks for creating immersion and creating a spooky environment with its very messily cluttered icons and overly distracting survivor portraits. Well, I'm going to show an example of the two HUDs back to back, both outlined to create a black silhouette to show you exactly how much of a difference there is. Here's the original HUD. It's very small, neat, and leaves the rest of the screen to see actual gameplay and not just still PNGs. The new HUD is tremendously big, messy, distracting. You can't tell exactly where the focus is supposed to be kept. One more example of how this just ruins gameplay is with one of my favorite games of all time, Fatal Frame 2 or Project Zero 2 Wii Edition that remade the original with new graphics and an over-the-shoulder POV like Dead by Daylight. I understand that this is a single-player game that might not need all the information that a multiplayer game needs, but that's why it's the perfect example. Single-player games are the best at immersing the player, so if we add HUD elements that would take away the immersion, it's easier to see how and how much. Here's the game with no HUD. Here's the game with the original Dead by Daylight HUD. Here's the HUD from the current version of the game.
I've been waiting for so long.
This is not going to be a perfect example, but I still feel that the original keeps so much more feeling of the original game than current. One more thing I'd like to add before discussing some fan-made fixes is auras. Auras went from being visible, but not too visually distracting to, oh my god, it looks like I have red pieces of paper taped onto my screen. The bright auras are insanely useful for people with visual impairments, but I wish we had a slider from completely turning auras off to having a lowered brightness to the auras currently. These fixes will be very quick, as it was talked about so much, and I don't want to take credit for someone else's art. This concept posted by Solid Snake Boy 2 years ago on Reddit, cannot find the original artist, shared this lovely concept that is almost perfect. The cons of this concept are the perks being so high up and stacked on a medkit, but I love how simple yet effective it is. It combines the simplicity of the old HUD with not having too detailed icons, but still being able to tell which survivors are which and seeing what they are doing. Yeah. Okay. The focus is also kept in the middle of the screen and upwards and not pushing out from the sides vertically. Some other personal fixes that I feel should be toggleable settings. Dynamic perks. Perk icons that fade in or out whether or not they're being currently used and vice versa. Disable items showing on the HUD. I feel like seeing the item on the HUD isn't necessary since you already see it in your hand. I think you should also be able to see the charges and rarity of the item on the item itself. Thank you so much for watching. If you did like this video, please remember to comment maybe what your thoughts are on this. Remember to like. I really do appreciate you showing your support. And make sure to subscribe. I hope everyone who watched this video, and especially if you got to the end, to have a wonderful day, and goodbye.